See the blue sky, feel the wind that blows. Get the rush in, heaven only knows. I'm all alone, still lying far from lonely. On a journey, on a winding road. Got tired of the running, you're catching up. I got hungry for the sunny high mountain tops. So I made some plans, some dreams to catch, to promised lands, to find my path, see the planet from greater heights. I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights. And I'm flying alone now, down now. I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights.
Like the proverbial box of chocolates in Forrest Gump, when you visit gay sex clubs in the daylight hours, you never know what you're going to get. There was hardly a soul there at 4 on a weekday afternoon. But as soon as I spotted a very famous movie director walking around in his towels, still wearing his wig, cruising the halls, I guess he wasn't planning a dip in the pool. Neither of us was interested in the other, so we... Oh! Hi! Welcome to the show. I was just so engrossed in FAIRYBOY that I didn't realize you were there. Of course I knew you were there. But literally, there's so much to read in this book. And I'm just really honored that coming up in the show today, I have the person that wrote this memoir, Garrett Glaser. So this book is already reaching multiple Amazon bestseller lists, and it's the just published autobiography. I'm not sure what's the difference is between autobiography and memoir. I've referred to this book as both, but it's just published by veteran journalist Garrett Glaser. So FAIRYBOY, growing up gay and out in pre-Stonewall, New York and beyond, is front and center in this episode. The book challenges all LGBTQIA plus journalists to live and work 100% out of the closet, to bring all of themselves to the newsroom each day to capitalize on the outsider status they endured growing up. Glaser, who worked for ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, and Entertainment Tonight over a 30-year career, says, quote, "It's crucial for all news people to bring their life experience to the work they do each day," close quote. So I generally have to say no to authors. Garrett didn't ask me to be on the show. I sought him out because we are kindred spirits, and I came out while studying journalism at Arizona State University in 1985. So I have an exciting exclusive interview with Garrett Glaser coming up, and I know you're going to want to stay tuned for it. I like to make up my questions as they go along. That's how I do my interviews, and I'm sure we're going to have exciting things to talk about. Maybe we'll visit that bathhouse again. You never know. I'm Nicholas Snow, and I'd like to thank Willie Ryan and John Pascal, owners of 849 Restaurant and Lounge, for their support of PromoHomo.TV from the beginning. I was honored to work at the restaurant the first 4 years they were open, during which time I was inspired to write this. At 849 Restaurant and Lounge, sitting in the lounge area at a high top with a view of the Grand Corridor, the main dining area, is truly like starring in one play while simultaneously watching another, both with fabulous scenery and lighting, a gorgeous cast, fascinating characters, and exciting plot twists, complete with movie stars and paparazzi, not to mention fabulous eats. I call it reality dinner theater. See and be seen while starring in your own scene. Perhaps we'll have a scene together. Make your reservations at 849.com.
Hi, it's Brad Furr, a proud media sponsor of PromoHomo.TV, and I'm the owner of K-Gay Palm Springs and Gay Desert Guide. We just wanted to say thank you and thanks to Nicholas Snow for what he does. K-Gay Radio is a worldwide streaming service of great dance hits that you can listen to anywhere, anytime. And when you're planning your visit to Greater Palm Springs, use gaydesertguide.lgbt.
Ask your smart speaker to play KGAY.
Hi, my name is Matt Scalarude, president of Pink Media, and a very proud and long-term supporter of PromoHomo.TV. And so at Pink Media, we've been working with companies large and small, including destinations such as this, to kind of help them target and reach the LGBT community online. And so we've been doing this for almost 30 years. And what's more important is that, it started out with banner ads and email campaigns, and now we've morphed into social media and video, and it's all about storytelling. So if you have a story and a message that you'd like to get out to a very targeted yet broad audience online, reaching the LGBT community, give us a call or reach us at www.pinkmedia.lgbt. Thanks.
The LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert is the only Coachella Valley organization dedicated to meeting the diverse needs of all LGBTQ plus individuals. From our Palm Springs McDonald Wright Building to the Center Coachella, the Scott Hines Behavioral Health Clinic, and the Community Food Bank, our mission comes to life by making meaningful connections to resources and to community that contribute to LGBTQ plus people's health and happiness. For more information, visit thecentercv.org.
And without further delay, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Garrett Glaser. Hi, Garrett.
Hi, Nicholas. Good to see you.
Well, it's wonderful to see you. I feel like, I should be bowing to you for,
I should be bound. Listen, you're doing this a long time, and I'm impressed by that. You paid your dues.
well, thank you so much. You came out publicly in 1994 in Los
Yeah,
Angeles, one of the first openly gay journalists to do it. That
yeah.
was I don't know, 6 years after the first National Coming Out Day in 1988. You and I both
Wow.
have connections to that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was about 10 years after I came out in college, uh, inspired to do so by the AIDS epidemic. So I learned that, okay, I have my life, I have my story, I have my truth. That's the most valuable thing I bring to this. I'm going to tell it. Um, for you, though, it was a different sort of challenge. You were established, you already had a career, you could potentially
Yeah.
lose it. So, even though there's so much in your book that happens before that moment, let's visit that moment and
Well,
tell us what happened.
I'll tell you something very interesting that most people think, oh, and you would, it's normal, that, oh, it was important to him to be out on the air. In reality, the LA Times said, we want to do a story on you as an out gay guy in the LA market on Channel 4. And I said, okay. I asked the bosses at NBC, and they're like, okay, fine. Well, the article came out, it was very nice, and that was the end of it. And somehow during the interview, the reporter said it's unclear when Glazer will come out on the air because, like actually on the air, because, and I said, to be honest, NBC hasn't given me any guidance, so I'll just leave it be. I come in one morning, and apparently NBC management had gotten tired of a little joke, funny thing that the Times would run every few days. Is Glazer out yet? And, it became this little joke. And so management got tired of it. And so I walk in, they said, go into the office of the president of Channel 4, my boss's boss, and she wants to talk to you. And she said, Garrett, you're coming out today during the newscast. I said, really? Okay. Is there any like reason that it's today? And she said, well, what are you covering today? I said, I did the little showbiz thing with like 5 stories in 4 minutes every day. I said, well, we have an obituary of Elizabeth Glaser, the AIDS lady. Yeah, she said, work it into that, like talk about the death. And so I said, as a gay man who's lost many friends to AIDS, I appreciate what Elizabeth Glaser did to mainstream awareness of this disease. And it was fine, and it got a blurb in the paper. But I did it because NBC said, you're doing it today. So that's how it happened.
Well, and it's not like that's the first time you had come out. You, as you
No,
just shared, you had just already been out in the newspaper, which was, newspapers were so more well read at that time. And
yeah.
people living in the LA area, swore by the Los Angeles Times.
Yeah, and I guess is there readership that so many newspapers have readership that's gone down. Um,
Well, a lot of the issues with the Los Angeles Times has been because of their ownership and editorial policies that have shifted because of that. The intrusion of conservative politics into the newsrooms of America.
I am crazy. What's going on? Yeah.
Um, do you so this is your book is called Fairy Boy. Now, like you're probably, I don't know if it was like me, but I was called a fag through my entire growing up years, and I feel like a lot of my life has been a response to that childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
did you know you were a fairy boy? I guess that's the question.
Well, what happened was I switched to a private school in 8th grade. I got a scholarship to this kind of fancy school. And I developed my first real crush on a boy who was my age, which was like 13. And I was so in love with him because he was adorable and the smartest kid at school, student president for a while. But he was also the son of the feminist author Betty Friedan. And I once on the bus, we all took a school bus to the soccer fields in New York every day for gym. And I don't know why, but you know how straight boys, when they're like teenagers, they have rank out contests and insulting each other and who can be more insulting. And I'm listening to this, and I don't know why, but they said something that I thought was funny, and I laughed. And this pissed off John for Dan. He said, look who's laughing, Fairy Boy himself. And I was so in
Oh.
love with him, and it didn't bother me at all. I thought, ooh, he figured me out. I guess I'm pretty obvious. But that's where the name, and I thought, what am I going to call this memoir? And I thought, Fairy Boy, that's the real thing, So, and I wrote it for 10 years, and it would have been all about pre-Stonewall New York, but my partner, David Schmerler, a retired attorney, said, I am bored with your career shit. I would rather have you just reminisce about New York before Stonewall, early and mid 60s. He said, that's what you. So I ended up writing two books and I just pushed them together. And so half of it is life as an out gay kid, and the other half is being out on in TV news around the country for 30 years, you know? So,
Well, with that additional information, describe
yeah.
this. Tell us about this photo I've put on the screen.
Oh boy, he plays a big role in this book. This is a boy. This boy went on to become the men's fashion editor of the New York Times.
Now you're on the left,
I'm
right?
Yes, I am, with a lot
Okay.
of hair. I wish I had it still. Um, and that's Robert. And we met in a sex venue and went out for 2.5 years. My first romance. I was 17. And that was 1 year to the day, 1 year after Stonewall. And so a bunch of people, including us, we all said, let's walk up Sixth Avenue and have a little parade and mark 1 year since Stonewall. And that's in Central Park. There was thousands of people showed up. So we went, and of course now people think, oh, it's historic, but then it was just kind of like, well, let's do something, you know? Well, let's walk up Sixth Avenue. It was very disorganized. I mean, there were no sponsors, there was no organization. It was just kind of like a bunch of homos walking up Sixth Avenue, you know? And, hey, gay power, you know? So anyway, I still am in touch with him 60 years later, 50 years later. Uh,
Uh,
he lives in the East Village in Manhattan.
it's great that we're all still here.
Really? So many are going.
So I randomly opened to the page about the club baths and or the
Oh,
continental
yes.
baths, the
Oh,
continental baths.
yes.
I'm
Continental,
guessing
yes.
in New York. The director walking around with his wig. Is that director still alive?
You know, it's better if I don't say. I
Okay, so
don't
you're
want to.
not you. Let me just put it this: Did the
I'm not
director
going to
ever
out him.
come? Did the director ever come out?
He never did. There had always been some discussion, but he was married several times. I don't think he had children, but he was married to a famous person, and I guess, I covered old Hollywood for 4 years at ET, 89 to 93. And I interviewed a lot of guys who had been movie stars in the 30s, 40s, and 50s who were never out and were not going to come out. And what I realized is that it's disingenuous for me to say, you should be out, because it's just not who they are. They're not comfortable being out. It seems wrong to them to discuss anything like that. It was definitely products of the times.
Well, I I respect that. I think people should come out of their own accord unless they are doing things against our community. At
Yes,
which point, I think that
yes,
they are open season now. With
yeah.
with no opinion on this person's sexual orientation, you did actually have the opportunity to interview John Travolta on the red carpet when you were with Channel 4.
Oh yeah,
I'm guessing this is at the Golden Globe Awards based on
yeah.
the letters I see in the background.
I interviewed him a bunch, maybe 3 or 4 times at press junkets for movies he was doing. And he was always very nice. And the closest I ever got to controversial stuff was I gave him an out to talk about Scientology. So he could either take it and talk about it or not. And he did talk about it. And he said, I know it has this crazy reputation, but my experience has been really good with it, blah, blah. And I had known for years about the stories about John, and I had heard he was bisexual, but I didn't bring it up. Um, it was when you work at ET, It's all about playing by the rules. You don't want to spring stuff on a star. If you're going to ask about that kind of stuff, you should at least bring it up first. Like, you know what? We might get into sexuality in this interview, and I just want to give you a heads up. So it's, ET is very nice about that, as opposed to some shows that are not.
So ET couldn't really consider themselves to be hard journalism.
I always say this, 30 years in news, the producers, and there's 100 people who staff ET for 5 nights a week, 22 minutes a night. They are more professional, smarter, more experienced than any news organization I ever worked for, including NBC, ABC, CBS. It was the most intelligent, sophisticated, clever group of people I had ever met. And that was true after 4 years. I used to think, what a group of people. And that wasn't true at all. That was true at ET, but it certainly wasn't true at some of the more tabloid shows.
Yeah, I don't mean to trash ET at all, but the point I'm making is that there's sort of this unwritten rule of entertainment journalism that, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You get me on that
Oh,
red
I see.
carpet, you get me on that red carpet, and I'm gonna not ask questions to upset the apple cart. And
Yeah, yeah.
um, how did you feel? How did you feel when Outweek in New York, under the leadership of Michelangelo Signorelli, started to out people who were in some ways in their life working to harm the LGBTQ community and civil rights movement? How did you feel about it at the time, and were you ever asked in your role as an out journalist to comment on it?
No, I had a bit of a row with Mike Signorelli once, but really not about that. My problem with some of the more outrageous stories was that the guys putting those stories out, I felt, had not pinned down the facts, and so they had not attempted to vet what they were reporting. And if they had, I would have had less problem with it. There were a few guys who I knew were gay, but they were not out. But interestingly, it's not always what we think from the outside. It's not the star saying, I remember once, what's his name? Um, Barry Manilow once said to a friend of mine, that my friend said, how come you're not more out? And he said, well, my fans are entirely old ladies, and I just don't feel safe in doing it. But I also felt like a lot of time it's not the celeb who is drawing this entire thing behind him. It's the staff, it's managers and agents, packagers. Maybe you're the guy who's going to help that star get a commercial endorsement deal. So there's all this business stuff that goes in there, and it's not often not as simple and direct as it should be or as it seems. And
That's
I never made a lot of money, but some of these people make a shitload of money, and they don't want to mess that up. They'll play the game as long as they can keep making that kind of money. I
Well,
don't, you know.
but then you have, I mean, the whole premise of my 1990s public access television show that explored the relationship between the entertainment industry and the LGBTQ civil rights movement was the power of our own voice. And I would say often in my show, it was called Tinseltown's Queer. I described it as a Queen's version of Larry King. uh, I would I would say honor and express your truth to the people whom you influence, because silence does equal death and action does equal life. And
Yeah.
it took a long, long time for people to kind of get that message, but I think the first one of the first people to ever do it in a way that demonstrates what's possible is Ellen DeGeneres. When she came when she came out. For my viewers that have wondered how come I keep looking off over here, is I have a lot of photos that Garrett provided, and I've been trying to figure out, which ones I might bring up to
Oh,
ask about. And so here's another photo I'd love just you to share about. That's clearly also at the Golden Globes, a very
oh,
young Tom Hanks that you're
Tom
interviewing.
Hanks, right. Oh, wow. Well, yeah, that you know what they don't tell you in these things is you're talking to these stars, but they're cutting away from you every 10 seconds to go cover something else. So you never know when you're on or not, and I'll say, "Did we talk about this already?" Oh, it doesn't matter. It wasn't airing, so you do it again. I feel like sometimes they forgot I was out there. In control rooms, they're so busy, and I often would say, let me know when we're on, but they were busy and sometimes they wouldn't. Uh, I don't know about you, but you've probably been to those things and covered some of those things. And I always was confused. They would give me a gal as a producer at those, and I'd say, who is this? What is she up for? And how many has she won? I just background on whatever star is about to walk by. I couldn't remember because there were so many shows and so many awards things. Oh, it's terrible. So anyway, I had great help. I just remember my little producer gals were like 12 and remembered everything. They loved TV or film and they followed it all. So,
Well, now the producers will hand the on-camera talent a card with the shows, the
yeah,
graphic, the network, the branding on it, and they'll be able to do that.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
so getting back into more specifically the book, on the
Yes, I
back
love that.
cover it says. An inside look at the hidden world of gay New York before Stonewall, seen through the eyes of an adventurous teenager. The author went on to become the first local TV reporter to come out of the closet on the air. In this memoir, he recounts the formative experiences of his youth and later life against the tumultuous events of mid-20th century America.
Yeah.
And Bob Wittek, who's very famous in
Oh
the
yeah.
LGBTQ
Lovely, lovely
community,
man. Lovely guy.
communications CEO and activist, he says, and he has a frame of reference, Bob Wittek. Garrett Glaser defines what it means to be an outsider among insiders with sass, a few cheers, paybacks, triumph, and sexiness. From start to finish, FAIRYBOY is a joyride offered by a gifted storyteller, bon vivant, and consummate journalist. And then Elaine Hume Peake, who is known because of the Kaboom Boys, says, Fairy Boy is that perfect surprise and honest coming of age tour de force. It's deliciously crafted storytelling just right for these turbulent times. And then finally, on the front cover, you quote Eric Marcus, who's the podcast founder and host of Making Gay History, who says, the best kind of time travel and beautifully written too.
You're very
Uh,
nice to read that. Thank you.
well, I want to because we only have so much time, and I want my viewers to know how many other people are really really excited about this
I'm
book.
shocked. It's so great. I'm so
I
happy with the reaction. I wasn't sure how it would go over, and people like it. I mean, if there are people who hate it, I haven't heard from them yet. I'm sure I will, but I wrote
uh
it because I just felt like I had to. I'm getting forgetful, and I thought I don't want to forget some of these stories, so I wanted to get them down on paper before I forgot. And I worked on
we
it 12 years.
we have live viewers, and one of them, Charles Richardson, says hi. So
I
he's one of our live viewers right now.
Very good.
Um, is what would you like to say about the book, or any part of the book that you think would be particularly interesting for our viewers today?
I thought a few weeks ago, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get interviewed. I got to figure out what's what's the takeaway on this book. And I thought to myself, all my life, back to when I was like in first grade, second grade, I I wasn't aware that they were gay, but I had a series of homosexual mentors growing up. I had a teacher in sixth grade, another one in fourth grade. Um, I had like, once I came out, once I was working in broadcasting, I befriended a politician who was out. All of those guys were and one woman, my drama teacher, an out lesbian, all of them made me realize that as a gay kid, I needed role models. I didn't know how to behave or what was cool and what wasn't cool. And they said, you better do your studying because this is your chance to get ahead. And if you go to a good college, you might get a better job and blah, blah. And it went on and on and on like that. And I can't tell you how valuable that was for me and how grateful they're all gone now, but I'm incredibly grateful to these people. And some of them were treated badly by the schools we were in. It was a different time.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you for your life and the way you have lived it and to the extent that you've been a role model. And I actually have a great comparison to show you. I'm going to remove this photo. I want to show a different photo to make my
Okay.
point. So I'm going to do it right now. All right. So this is when you won your Emmy Award in Miami. And
Yes.
the
Oh,
reason
yeah.
that I mentioned that is, one of the most successful contemporary openly gay journalists right now is Gio Benitez, who
Yes.
also cut his teeth in journalism in Florida. And that was, decades after you did.
Yeah.
And it is lives like yours that created the space for lives like his. It doesn't undermine
Oh,
his talent and his hard work and everything he's done and all of the barriers he's broken and the fact that he is also
very
uh,
good.
an incredible role model. But it just reminds me that all of us stand on the shoulders of giants in one way or another.
I didn't realize it at the time, but after graduating from college, I thought, these people, like the drama teacher, Anne Mackay, she was out at Vassar in 1940 or 41. Out. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm sure she didn't get a lot of jobs she wanted. And there was some hostility, but she wrote a book about it called Wolf Girls at Vassar, about all these women at Vassar who, a lot of them were lesbian and very closeted, and it was a whole secret society. And I just think you're right. Every generation has people. Well, what about the astronomer from DC and Mattachine and all of that? Who wanted members to look upright, conservative, nicely dressed at the early demonstrations, and some people were furious about, I want to dress the way I want. But he thought we would go over better if we looked like everybody else and didn't look too
Suits and
different.
ties.
Yeah, and boy, some people
Yeah.
but I think you do what you got to do. Play it the way you want to play it. And I'm sure a lot of younger gay guys or gay people think, what's this old fuddy-duddy doing out there talking about the old days? And I got to tell you, I'm an old man and I am constantly shocked at the language I hear. Like not just in a club, but on the air, I hear stuff. Or, the way people dress now, or I have trouble, like I don't follow modern popular music. I follow, 30s and 20s music. So I don't know who any of the groups are today or who are the big stars. And
Well,
I'm sure
you're
they
also
think I'm ridiculous.
you also don't have the pressure of being on a red carpet with a live camera in your face, needing to talk about their careers in detail. One of
Right.
the things I want to point out is that there's sort of two sides to the coin regarding approach to activism. And you talked about the Mattachine Society and those early protests in front of the White House, and how people wore suits and ties, and you had drag queens and leather people and dykes who very masculine presenting dykes who didn't want to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
You fast forward a few decades and you had ACT UP, and there are many people who are part of the so-called leadership of the LGBTQ civil rights movement who really opposed ACT UP and its tactics. But the fact
yeah.
of the matter is, I'm alive today because of HIV medications that exist
Absolutely.
directly out of the activism of ACT UP. And
Absolutely. I think the thing I always, I even in the book I talk about covering the epidemic, and I at that time at ABC in New York, I was kind of the entertainment guy. I had a little thing every day, and because these were my people dying, I was determined to send crews out to get celebrity-studded AIDS events as often as I could, sometimes three, four times a week. And people say, "Oh, it's enough with the AIDS." And you say, you know what? My people are dying. And I feel like I should at least mention the epidemic as much as I can and show you big stars at events. So it taught me what it did is, I think, by getting so much coverage about the epidemic, it became mainstreamed into society. And it got more coverage than it would have had if it was just that gay disease. And I think that was really important. And I'm grateful for groups like ACT UP not letting it go, you know.
sure,
Uh,
I'd love to be on a panel with you and Hank Plant, who had similar parallels in his career, primarily in the Bay Area, but both with equally
yeah.
powerful influence. And I also just want to give a shout out to some people you and I both knew or know, and that's Rob Eichberg and Honey Ward, who were the
Oh
founders of
yeah.
The Experience. And
Do you see she's
really,
moving? She moved to France. You
well, I
see
don't,
this?
can you blame her? Can you
I
blame
can't.
really?
I wish it was
Yeah,
me.
right. So the experience in the experience in conjunction with the national and
Oh,
gosh,
what
I've
was
so
it?
this um
What was that called? His thing, right?
well, no,
The
I'm thinking about,
Experience Weekend.
well, yeah, the experience, and then Gino Leary, who was the executive director of, it was the legal organization, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but they collaborated to launch the very first coming out day in 1988, which was featured that year on the
Oh,
Oprah Winfrey Show, who at the time had 25 million viewers per episode. So, you know,
yeah.
each of us in our own way can create a ripple that can lead to a wave that can, we could have a tsunami of truth out there
Wouldn't that be something?
if we collectively chose it. I want to
Yeah.
leave you with the last word or words. No rush to make them fast. To sort of sum up our conversation today.
Okay. Um, if I kind of bottom line Fairy Boy, and by the way, there's soft cover, hardcover, audio book, and Kindle. So there's four formats. And we think at this point that the audio is going to outsell everything. I hired an audio engineer, designer, and it came out really well. And to hear this, I'm narrating these stories, and some of them are pretty good and interesting and funny and so it's not all that. I didn't want it to be dry. I wanted it to be alive. Um, and the one thing I would leave people with is the world needs another memoir by a gay man like it needs nothing. But I'm glad I did it. I felt I had to do it. So many crazy things happened in the course of 30 years on the air. Uh, Seeing gay men tortured in Haiti and South Africa and the epidemic and kind of highlights of all those years of covering things that never left me or spending 9/11 at the towers and covered with crap and it gave me it gave me cancer up here and they said, well, do you want to file for a grant because you're a victim? I said, okay. And after 20 or 30, what was it, 20 something years, they just sent me a check, which I was grateful for. So I didn't realize the shit in the air that day. The most common thing people got on 9/11 was skin cancers up here.
Yeah, you sent a very powerful photo of you with the smoking tower in the background. It
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
large enough. It wasn't large enough for me to show on screen, but to
Yeah,
have
no, I
to
know.
to have been in New York for that, I can't imagine. Um,
Yeah,
I've
no
put
idea.
Fairyboy the book .com on the screen. I
Thank you.
also previously in the comments put the Amazon link. Uh, we are
You're
neighbors in a
wonderful.
way. You're in the San Diego area. I'm in Palm Springs. So if next time we're in the same city, let's get together. But
I
really,
would like that actually.
congratulations.
Well, I like to go to Palm Springs and I like it whenever I know someone there. And I didn't realize you were there. When did you go out there? 10 years ago?
Well, I've been here on this stretch since 2011. Prior to that, I
Okay.
was living in Thailand for 5.5 years, about which I
Whereabouts?
wrote a book. I was in Bangkok.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So,
What was it like? I went there and had a great time with friends, but what was it like to live there? I should let you go, but what
oh,
was it like to live there?
well, it was amazing to live in Thailand, and I was glued to season 3 of White Lotus because
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
of what you saw in there was really representative of what goes on in Thailand.
really.
The Thai kickboxing, the style and flow of the luxury resorts, the deep Buddhism, the sort of the shy politeness of Thai people,
Hmm.
all of it, the food, the culture, the dance, the art, the history, just off the top of my head.
Wow.
So Garrett
Uh,
Glaser, I'm a
okay,
forever
pleasure.
fan. I'm a forever
Thank
fan,
you.
and I really thank you for watching. You can hang out in the green room, and because we can still talk after the show.
Okay.
But thanks again for
Uh,
being on today.
Nicholas Snow, you're a very kind gent, and I appreciate it.
It's my honor, and I wish you the best.
Thanks.
Everyone at home, thanks for watching. You can find all these episodes at PromoHomo.TV, and I will see you next time.
In a safe place, I got room to breathe. Been a long chase, but at last I'm free. These open woods, I knew I could find peace here. Nothing like the city where I got tired of the running, the catching up. I got hungry for the stunning high mountain tops. So I made some plans, some dreams to catch, some promised lands to find my path, see the planet from greater heights. I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights. See the blue sky, feel the wind that blows. Get the rush in, heaven on